Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Tuesday's edition of the Star Good Morning Show. Today being the 16th day of July 2019. I am Leonora Jawara, and the African proverb for today says, if you dance in the water, your enemies will accuse you of causing dust. Top stories we shall be looking in the program today. The Institute of Governance Reform has presented findings on Sierra Leone's performance in the Global Corruption Barometer 2019 Africa, released by Transparency International in collaboration with Afrobarometer, which ranked Sierra Leone third in Africa in the fight against corruption. A non-governmental organization, Apple Sierra Leone, has donated food and non-food items to the Variety Children and Family Service Child Protection Agency in Freetown. The Market Women Association in the Western Area Rural District has organized a meeting of peace and reconciliation for cheerleaders in Waterloo with the theme Promoting Peace and Cohesion in the Marketplaces for Rural Development. These stories and more coming up shortly. Well, with me in the studio is James Tamba Kamara, Communications Persons, EPASL, that's the Environment Protection Agency Sierra Leone. You'll be talking to us on the agency's drive to address environmental issues in the country. Good morning, James. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. I shall be back with you shortly. But first, let's have a message from our sponsors.
Give me money.
What money?
Give me
Okay, I'm
money.
not saying open up. What do you like house?
Can't give me money. What's kind of bad stick this? What's enough for putting money again? You don't have to can't take her. Why you for the shash me bad safe?
Auntie Jojo.
Mama, how you doing?
Thank you. I don't come on a bank. What you make you face this?
That's all that man. Hey, Gapi can't take me money, don't go. But why don't tell her say they can't give me money if it's not you?
Hey, Auntie Jo. All tell when me can at this society needs. If man take you money loss. You know don't hear about financial inclusion. Where local commercial bank they make everybody, no matter how it's done, no matter the kind of business way they do.
Financial waiting.
Inclusion.
That ain't for all man.
Any item, you not cripple in the bank. You not cripple for bank. Because not for the today, for we tomorrow one. And now they don't make it easy for we. They don't open in different way. Then we go make you back not go feel bad about your banking system at all. Then get keke account.
You look one confused me small. Then keke rider there. Wait, say that they open accounts for them. Wait. Where they want to ride bike? Then totes man, they don't more lanky driver they all.
Yes.
They only open accounts for them.
Yes. Sometimes you want buy keke, you go and ride for party forever. You dey go put that small thing. Come up a keke account. They get the other account what they call Comra account. Therefore we then Comra them.
For we?
Yes. We then Comra them. So tell you picky don't put on school. That nurse give they help we let my people go. When reach now for go college, you not get money. Yeah. But that account will be open for I can just go and take you pay school fee.
When they talk about this Comra business, the Comra account where they go open. Well, you ain't no born now.
You dey still open accounts. Comra accounts, then give back that mandate where you open them. Where you born to man, the pikin they can run back through that account there. So they don't make as you and now they don't open branch now bonds. Imagine how far they go now. Therefore make things easy for me and you too.
Hey, better way can tell me, oh, hey, Sergeant Tenki. That me sister, the way we in picking they thief him money, the way they destroy that one day. And they go mad, they go tell her.
Local commercial bank, now make them make easy. They say tell you paddy, may go tell him paddy.
And they go tell her.
What you tell you so go you explain her. Life dey easy.
Commercial bank with Coquel. Commercial bank #1. Bank with Coquel.
4 minutes gone past 9, and now let's begin the program with a first news item for today. Now, the Institute of Governance Reform, the IGR, has, at a press conference, presented findings on Sierra Leone's performance in the Global Corruption Barometer 2019 Africa, released by Transparency International in collaboration with Afrobarometer, which ranked Sierra Leone third in Africa in the fight against corruption. Hassan Kuruma has more and in our reports.
According to the Global Corruption Barometer for 2019, corruption hinders Africa's economy, political and social development. These as well have become a major barrier to economic growth, good governance, basic freedom such as freedom of speech or citizen right to hold government to account. Speaking on the importance of the African Anti-Corruption Day, Mrs. Lovinda Bandua, the Executive Director, Transparency International Sierra Leone, said Sierra Leone is joining other African countries to celebrate the second African Anti-Corruption Day as a way to give prominence to the fight against corruption in Africa.
Today is 11th of July, and for this year 2019, Sierra Leone is joining other countries in Africa to observe the second African Anti-Corruption Day. We started this event last year. Last year was the first year we started observing the African Anti-Corruption Day. And why do we have the African Anti-Corruption Day? Because on 11th July 2017, following an executive council decision in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the chairperson of the African Union Commission then, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, declared the 11th of July every year as the African Anti-Corruption Day. You know, we have the
Presenting the reports to pressmen, the Executive Director of Institute for Governance Reform, Andrew Lavalley, noted that the report shows there is a massive corruption in Africa, noting that the final analysis puts Sierra Leone 43%, which shows the country is above average on the percentage of people who think government is doing badly in the fight against corruption in Sierra Leone. This, in his word, shows the government is doing great in the fight against corruption.
In 2015, overall bribery rate was 41%. It's increased in 2019. 41% is increased. Public schools is 42, is 10%, is 20%, but the overall corruption is 33% now in public schools. In clinics, this is where we need to devote effort. In clinics, the number of women, even though they say healthcare is free for pregnant women and lactating mothers, is 50%. So it means half of the population are still paying bribes. Or internally displaced camps, that is now reduced. Utilities, it has reduced. The police, it has reduced. So it's good news for this SLP. The number of people who are now saying, I am paying bribe to police, is increased. And the Office of the President by 2019, 48% of people, percentage of people think that most or all people in these institutions are corrupt. It's around the presidency. 48% of citizens by 2015 felt that most or all people around the presidency were corrupt, and 24% of them are saying that now. So it's a major shift. For Parliament, it was 50%, now it's 25%. It's new. We don't know whether it will change later on, but we want to see how that percentage reduces in Parliament. Government officials see the trend reducing. Local government officials, the trend is reducing.
Representing the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Director of Public Education and Outreach Department, Patrick Sandy, extends his profound appreciation for a well-compiled report, stating how impressive the report is as to 2015. But however, maintained that they as a commission will be cautious and steadfast in the war against corruption in the country.
The report is good. The report is impressive when you compare it to 2015. But then, as Mr. Lavalley has said, and even what we believe in as a commission is that this is not the best. We believe that we still continue to put a lot more into the fight against corruption. So going forward, the data we get will be the best. We have indicated before with the leadership of the ACC now that we will position the fight against corruption and the support we are getting from the leadership of the country. He has expressed it, he has demonstrated it, and we continue to enjoy it. So as a commission, we also want to thank the leadership of this country, His Excellency the President, for the support he continues to give to the fight against corruption.
The head of media of the Sierra Leone Police, Superintendent Brahma Kamara, was also impressed with the report, adding that the force is gradually moving away from being a force for good to a force doing better.
We are seeing some aspect of people's equality between Sierra Leone. If you want to put Sierra Leone and Guinea, we want to keep that momentum.
The Global Corruption Barometer Africa, published by Transparency International in partnership with Afrobarometer, presents the largest, most detailed set of public opinion data on citizens' view on corruption and direct experience of bribery in Africa. This survey is conducted in 34 countries between 2016 and 2018, with over 47,000 citizens in 35 countries in Africa. For Star News in Freetown, Hassan Kuruma reporting.
Thank you so much, Hassan Kuruma, for putting that report together. And this is the Star Good Morning Show. Today, we're looking on environmental issues. Like I said earlier, is James Tamba. He is here with me in the studio. He's the communications person for EPA. Good morning again, James.
Thank you.
Okay, first, let's look at tangible impacts the EPA has created in Sierra Leone. How effective is the EPA in the country?
Well, yes. First of all, let's look at the regulatory framework which the EPA has been able to put in place. You find out that before the advent of the EPA, there were certain things that were done to the environment without proper regulation. And so this is no longer the case. We have been able to institute a mechanism that has made it possible for people to work within that framework and ensure that the environment is not depleted as it used to be. So when you talk about people that are coming to this country to invest in terms of mining and other activities which disturb our environment, you find out that the EPA has been able to put a mechanism in place for these investors to be able to play within the rules. In other countries, what happens is that when you are carrying out certain activities, you would have to do a performance, an environmental bond. In Sierra Leone, is not the case though, because that may be seen as stifling investment, even though it is not. But what we have done is to ensure that companies are subjected to certain rules and regulations, whereby we are able to monitor them strictly. And so by that, we are able to subject those that may want to go outside of the law, subject them to these rules and regulations, and ensure that where they may have fallen foul of the laws of this country, remedial action is taken accordingly. So the regulatory framework there is very, very important. And also, if you look at the way we have strengthened our sensitization drive, because that has been one of the most important issues that the new executive chairman has set himself, that if we are to be able to change the mindset, if we are to be able to, environmental protection to a very large extent involves behavioral change. People need to change from those kinds of activities which they used to engage in, and then understand that they themselves have a positive role to play, so that our environment is protected. So that cannot be achieved if the people themselves do not know the implications of their actions. So this is why we have instituted a robust sensitization drive, both in the Western area and outside of the Western area, to educate our people about the impact of some of their actions.
That's take me to my next question. You talk about putting mechanisms in place in regulations. But let's look at the formulation of environmental policies. What has been done so far in terms of implementing these policies?
Well, of course, the Environment Protection Agency is charged with the responsibility to advise government on policy formulation and implementation. And so with that mandate, we have been able to draft policies and submit to the office of the president for consideration. Some of these policies have been adopted by Parliament. We have a climate change policy in this country in line with the Paris Agreement that we have signed up to, and some other policies. Now, when it comes to implementation, we have had some challenges. challenges because,
What are some of these challenges?
well, it boils down to the issue of compliance. You may have these very beautiful laws and regulations, but if the people do not comply with these regulations, then they are as good as nothing. So that is one area that we have been facing a lot of challenges. There are people who come to this country and involve in activities for which they are required to obtain an environmental impact assessment license, which they are not, which they have not obtained, and you find out that their
And
activities
EPA is
go unregulated.
responsible for issuing this
Oh yes,
license.
EPA is responsible for issuing those licenses, and so oftentimes we rely on the communities to be able to feed us with information, to be able to track some of these people, because you find out that if you don't come to the EPA, then it becomes very difficult for us to be able to monitor your activities, because if we don't know you are existing, if you're operating in a very clandestine manner, then it becomes difficult for us to be able to monitor you in the first place. So what we do is we work with the locals, we work with local communities, and they feed us with information to say, these activities are going on here, are you aware of this? Are the people doing this in line with environmental regulations? And then when we come in, there are times when you realize that the people may be doing these activities with no regard to environmental laws. And in that regard, we have resorted to the courts, and sometimes we negotiate with these people, because there are times you do not just come and use the hammer, because there are other implications. So the courts is the very last resort, because at the end of the day, what we want is compliance. We are not interested in taking people to court or having people fined. What we're interested in is for people to abide by these measures that will ensure that we protect our environment.
But so far, how can you describe the compliance rate at people?
Well, the compliance rate is improving, because one of the very important things that have happened in the past few months is the establishment of an environmental court. When you look at the new divisions of the High Court that have been established by the Chief Justice, there is the Property and Environment Division, which now tells you that we have a court that is fully dedicated to hearing environmental cases. Because one thing that we do not like is for you to bring a matter before the court and there is a delay and somebody continues with certain activities that will impact on the environment. But now that we have a court that is dedicated to these kinds of issues, that in itself sends out the message that it's no longer business as usual. Even though, yes, we still have challenges in that regard, but it is improving.
There's been stiffer laws for violators.
Oh yeah, there are laws, of course. If you look at the Environment Protection Agency Act of 2008, there are certain offenses that are created, and there are penalties. There are very serious fines when people transgress the environmental rules and regulations. So the laws are there. But like I told you, we are not actually interested, in taking people to court. What we are interested in is how we can reason together so that people understand that the environment is very critical to national development, so that their actions are guarded. And when that is done, the work of the Environment Protection Agency becomes easy.
But looking at the awareness, environmental awareness amongst people and popularizing your work, how much have you done as an agency in terms of popularizing your work and making environmental issues become more aware to people?
Well, what we have done is, first of all, to recognize the fact that when we talk about environmental protection, it's not just limited within the Western area. We have identified the major players. We have identified those activities which are ongoing, traditional activities, for example, farming activities, those methods of clearing bushes. people use this burning method to clear their bushes for farming purposes. All of these activities have been impacting on the environment and have also been impacting on our health. And people do not actually know that. So what we have done is to create partnerships at the local level and also, government, civil society, so that with these partnerships, people can actually come and advocate on their own on environmental protection. So now you realize that even within those local communities, they themselves are now putting measures in place. Without the EPA having to come in, they are putting measures in place to be able to address some of these environmental concerns that they are faced with. And so you find out that when you involve the communities, when environmental protection becomes participatory, there are results. There are very good results that you realize at the end of the day. So working with communities has helped us a lot in terms of popularizing our sensitization drive.
Okay, sensitization is very important. It's very key. But again, understanding the key problems of environmental issues is very important. So have you made some findings that the EP I'm talking about, and in terms of identifying Sierra Leone's most common environmental problems?
Oh yes, as a very serious government institution, like the EPA, one would expect that, of course, by now we would have carried out extensive studies about the environment, which we have actually done. And in fact, some time back, we inaugurated the State of the Environment report. That report tells you how we have managed our environment, where we still have challenges, and so on and so forth. And that report was highly acclaimed by no less an institution than the Abidjan Convention Secretariat. So when the EPA conducts research and come up with these kinds of reports, what that tells you is that, one, we would have identified some of these critical areas that are depleting our environment. For example, you talk about deforestation, you talk about mining activities, particularly these artisanal miners that at times is very difficult to regulate them because, strictly speaking, they do not come within our purview. But because we have carried out certain studies, we have been able to work with other institutions to say that, yes, even though the EPA does not have a hand in this, but then we need to work together because there are environmental implications. So these studies have helped us a lot, like I said, and as a result of that, we have identified our problems, and we are now able to forge. Well, like I told you, one of the fundamental problems in Sierra Leone today is, one, the issue of deforestation. If you look at the forest cover, how it has been 10 years ago, and you compare to what it is today, you realize that we have done a lot to deplete our beautiful forests. And so you also look at the way we have been carrying out certain activities like mining. If you go to some of these communities, like in Kono, Koidu Town, you go to where Sarah Rutile, where they have been conducting their activities. The way the mining has been done in the past actually is not good for environmental protection. And these are some of the areas we have focused our attention to ensure that we try and change the narrative.
So looking at these problems, could it be the root causes of this problem? Could it be defined as policy failure?
Well, it's not so much about policy failure. It's about how we as a people can appreciate our roles and responsibilities towards matters that are pivotal to national development. Because when you have a government, it is not so much about saying, what has the government done for me? But as a good citizen, you also ask yourself, what am I doing to promote good governance? What am I doing to promote national development? So like I said earlier, the issue of environmental protection in this country or anywhere else in the globe, it's largely behavior. It has to do with behavioral change. Some of these petty things that we are doing, when we are throwing our dirt in the gutter, when we are cutting down trees, when we are doing all sort of things, sand mining and so on and so forth, some of these things have a very serious impact on the environment, and we do not even know that. So until and unless as a people we are able to appreciate our roles and responsibilities. Yes, the EPA has been created as an institution to be able to provide leadership in terms of environmental governance in Sierra Leone. But then if you do not have the cooperation of the people themselves, then it becomes difficult, and some of these responsibilities become unachievable, until we are able to actually garner our efforts together and then say, yes, we are responsible people, these kinds of things should not be done. I mean, we shouldn't be having what we call bombe within the capital city in this day and age. So you see people, when you go to some of these places, you see children scavenging, and the smoke that is emitted from these places, they cause a serious health hazard on these children.
And have you identified areas that are prone to hazard?
Of course, we have identified a number. In fact, ONS did a study, the Office of National Security, and came up with a list of disaster-prone areas within the Western area. Of course, we have other places outside of the Western area, but within the Western area, there are a number of disaster-prone areas. And what we have done and continue to do is that we engage the people that are resident in these areas and talk to them about what they should do and what they should not do. And particularly some of these areas where we think the people should not be residing in the first place. It has been challenging, but then we do not quit. We continue to engage them as our fellow Sierra Leoneans for them to understand that they too have a responsibility, in as much as they look up to government to be able to come to their aid, but they too in their own small way have a responsibility to the state, towards the state. And until we are able to, do our own part as citizens, as responsible citizens, then it becomes difficult for government to be able to carry out its own mandate.
Okay, now let's look at some of the achievements made by the EP. You have a new boss. What are some of the achievements made so far?
Well, thankfully, the new boss that we have has made a lot of inroads since he became captain of the ship. One of the most important things that he has undertaken is the review of EIA regulations, because it has been a concern.
What is this EIA
Well,
regulations?
EIA is the Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations.
Okay.
Because when you are applying for a license, you would have to do a study, and that study is called the Environmental Impact Assessment Study. So what has happened in the past, and people were complaining about, is that the EPA was levying a lot of charges, and as a result, the EPA posed a threat to their own investment activities, which wasn't the case. But what he has done, he has, brought them together to say, okay, you know what, let's dialogue. Try and understand our position, and we too will try and understand your position. So there has been a breakthrough. What he has done is to review the way fees have been calculated, because the way some people view our fee calculation in the past is that it's like when you have a one-size-fits-all, that no matter the activities that I'm conducting, but when it comes to fee calculation, we're subjected to the to the same method or formula. So he has said now, let us do it on a sector-specific basis to say, okay, if you are doing mining, we look at your activities and see how those activities impact on the environment. So the more likely your activities impact on the environment, the more likely your fees will go up. The more you invest in technology that would improve on your environmental footprint, the more likely it becomes for you to be accorded with incentives, so that because the calculation is done on an annual basis. When you're renewing your licenses, they look at what you have promised to do to improve on the environment and see what you have been able to achieve. That will be a factor that the agency will consider in terms of reducing your fees. So now it's strictly sector specific. And I think a lot of investors out there have welcomed the move. So that is one area that he has tackled. And also in terms of partnerships, when he came, he realized that, when we're talking about partnerships, it's not just within country. It has to be outside of the jurisdiction as well. So in fact, recently what he has succeeded in doing is to carve out a very serious partnership with the US EPA, that is the Environmental Protection in the United States of America. And so we now have a partnership, and the details of that partnership are being worked out. And then when once everything is concluded, and then the public will be able to know as to how we are forging it. But what are some of the fine details of this partnership? When he approached the US EPA, one very critical thing that he put before them is that we have a problem of developing the human resource. So please help us in carrying out, capacity building, so that in the past, after that partnership would have come into fruition, you would have Sierra Leoneans going to the United States and then benefiting from the USA EPA experience. So that is a very good thing. And also in terms of equipment, because you find out that the USA is a very sophisticated community in terms of technological advancement. So we too, by way of that partnership, will be able to benefit. And then what we have not been able to acquire in the past, by that partnership, then we hope to get and then be able to conduct our activities. You look at the area of sensitization. He has, of course, sensitization is very, very critical on his agenda. He has said that if we are to be able to lure our people to adopting best practices, then let us ensure that we are robust in sensitizing them, in educating them about the issues that matter in terms of dealing with our environment in this country. He has been able to do on-the-spot checks on companies. So, for example, he will come to a particular hotel and see how you're conducting your affairs, because there are times when we receive complaints that, this hotel is not doing very well in terms of sanitation and so on. So now what he is doing is to do on-the-spot checks to see whether people are really compliant in terms of what they have committed themselves to doing under the terms contained in the license, the environmental licenses in the first place. So there has been a lot within the very short while that he has taken over the leadership at the Environment Protection Agency.
What can you say about the status in which he met the agency?
Well, of course, the agency has been is one of the most revered agencies in Sierra Leone. He too acknowledged the fact that yes, the agency has done a lot, and so what he is now doing is to build upon that mark that has been set, because there has been a very high standard at the EPA in terms of our fiduciary responsibilities to the state. If you look at our audit reports, they have always been unqualified reports, meaning that we have not had any issues, So that is something he wished to maintain, And if you look at the discipline within staff members, you know, that is something also he wished to maintain. When you go to the EPA, when you look at the environment, you know that this is a very serious institution in terms of the professionalism which staff members demonstrate at the agency. So this is something Dr. Jawad wishes to maintain, so that within the next few months or years, you can take the environmental protection to another height.
Okay, so many people have been asking themselves this question, which I'm one of them. Monies collected for license, the environment assessment license, as you call it, where did this money go to? Is it back to the community or to the government?
That is a very important question, and I'm happy you brought it up, because there are times when people criticize the environment protection. Oh, you're having lots of monies, and so what are you doing with these monies? First of all, environmental protection is not something that is very cheap. In fact, those monies that people talk about, they are not even 1/3 of what we want to be able to handle environmental governance in this country in a very, very diligent manner. What we do at the Environment Protection Agency is to come up with projects. We write projects, and when those projects are funded outside of these monies that people talk about, of course, now those monies that we generate are deposited in the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So now we are a subvented institution. So we do not control these monies. We submit to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So, but what the people need to know here is that for the EPA, we think outside of the box. This is why we come up with a number of projects. And in fact, some of these monies, when we write this project, some of these monies are not utilized by the EPA. And that is one good thing that the people need to know. We have written projects for which the funds have not been used by the Environment Protection Agency. Rather, they are used by some other government institutions. So when the EPA conducts itself in this manner, that tells you that it is responsible. It is not so much about the issue of money. And some of these monies that are collected from companies, people need to know that our primary responsibility is not to generate income. Yes, we are a revenue generating institution, but that is not our main focus. Because when it becomes our main focus, then that means that those who are able to pay, regardless of what they do to the environment, at the end of the day, they will just pay in their monies. But that's not our proper concern. Yes, it is very good for us to be generating revenue for government, but at the same time, we have a task to fulfill, and that is protecting the environment. So our core focus is geared towards ensuring that those people comply with our rules and regulations, rather than saying, oh, EPA is collecting monies and so on. So these are the dynamics, and people actually need to know that.
All right, says James Damakamara, Communications Person of EPA Sierra Leone. Well, let's take another news item again. A non-governmental organization called Apple Sierra Leone has on Friday, 12 July, donated food and non-food items to the Variety Children and Family Service Child Protection Agency at their Kingdom residence in Freetown. Julie Smart takes up the story.
The gesture, according to Moses Eli, Operations Manager, Apple Sierra Leone, is aimed at enhancing the livelihood for children at Variety Sierra Leone as an outfit on child protection. He further pointed out that the organization is focused on helping the less privileged in society, adding that it's a non-profit organization that caters for humanitarian assistance.
And today we don't kind of Apple and Variety Children, but can help them with food. As you see, they cook food where Apple suits the bill, and we come with a bag of rice, drinks, cooking condiments like palm oil, 5 gallons of palm oil, and other things to help them because then they need. So this is not the work we happily do. And we not get external funding it. But to give back in society is very necessary. You know the wait past you get donor. You dey begin do waiting you get. So waiting we dey do now, we can see so now today as we come with waiting we get. The lily will get for can share with the pikin them what they need. Because we organization, they help the pikin them and the woman them. So if we are today, and that's for can purpose they can donate to the pikin them and help for support them.
Francis Lahai, founder and chief executive officer of Variety Sierra Leone Child Protection Agency, said he is delighted to receive the donation and described as huge the gesture of goodwill from Apple Sierra Leone. He recounted some of the challenges faced, especially in the area of payment of staff salaries, and called on government to render assistance in order to address some of their accompanying challenges.
I feel very much happy, and it's a special feeling about Apple too, because the way they express themselves, they do a parallel business, but they are also in humanitarian services. We are also in humanitarian services. I feel say it's a very good thing for even a partnership, because when you're dealing with these children, the needs of these children in this nation, no one organization can do it. We all have to do it, work together, help each other to see the future of these children and the nation. Unofficially, Variety started way back in 2012. We began to help communities, rehabilitate schools, work with children in the provinces. Then officially, we really started this home in 2015, with an ICC, an interim care center, wherein we respond to the calls for children in crisis. How do they bring them? For 60, 90 days. We also look for families. We make sure we check their background, then go through a very hectic process for become certified foster parents. We then do other course there with the issue license and give them the pikin them. Because we believe the pikin for grow up in a community, not in an orphanage. This is not an orphanage per se. It is an interim care center where a pikin they come, they just pass through, go in a home, they grow up in a community, go to community schools. Why? Because if a child is abused, then a child is raped, or you don't lost mama by tragic accident or whatever it is, you take that pikin, you put in an orphanage, the trauma continues. Per se, you are putting that child in prison. But if you let that pikin live in a community with a family, normal family, go to a community school, play with a company, a community, that trauma goes away naturally. So that's why we believe in that, and it is working.
Glenna Williams, a concerned citizen from the United States of America, also donated food items to the Variety Children and Family Service Child Protection Agency. For Star TV News, Julie Smart reporting.
Thank you, Julie Smart, for that report. 9:43 is the time from our studio clock. You're still watching the Star Good Morning Show live here on Star TV channel 21, and we're still discussing environmental issues. Now, Tamba, take us through some of the APA's recent activities.
Well, the recent activities we have engaged in, what we have realized over the years is that there are certain players that we have not reached out to. So as a result of that, they have been conducting their own activities without any inclination as to the impact of some of these activities on the environment. So if you look at those mechanics, those technicians that are dealing with refrigerators and so on and so forth, they have been, carrying out their own business. They have been dealing with these kinds of commodities without any knowledge as to the problems that are caused, because these refrigerators are coming with some very dangerous gases that are in them, and so when they are not properly taken care of, or those that are dealing in these kinds of electronics, if they are not properly informed as to what they should do or what they should not do, then we have a problem. So what we have done recently is to train these technicians and certify them, and also encourage the public to deal with these certified technicians, so that we do not do business as usual. And like I said about the issue of sensitization, what we are doing currently is to identify communities in the rural areas and do what we call a village-to-village sensitization. And through that village-to-village sensitization, we are able to reach out to these communities, know their problems, try and understand why is it that they still continue to do some of these traditional activities, and see how we can change their mindset and encourage them to do best practices. So the issue of training, workshops, and then also engaging communities through partnerships for them to try and understand their roles and responsibilities in society is very, very critical, and that is why we are very much conducting these activities in a very robust manner.
Okay, how can you describe government strides in towards improving environmental management across the country?
Well, the government is really keen on improving the environment, because you realize that one of the very good things that His Excellency has done in the area of timber logging is, of course, when he assumed the mantle of leadership, he placed a ban on timber logging, because the way timber logging is done in this country, it is done in a very irresponsible manner. And so now he has put in place a mechanism whereby yes, you can still continue to carry out the activity, because government derives revenue from that, but then it now has to be done in a very responsible manner. And this is what we have advocated in the past and continue to advocate, that we are not opposed to, we are not saying timber logging must be banned in this country in its entirety. What we are saying is, let it be done in a very responsible manner. And that is what government is doing right now. You also look at the support that government, because we operate under the office of the president. And so the government has been very much supportive of our activities, giving us the free hand to be able to work and then achieve our mandate and roll out a number of activities. And that in itself is very good, because when you have the political will, for you to be able to do your own thing, then it becomes easier for you. So I can say that with the kind of support that we are receiving from government, of course we ourselves are a government institution, so the support that we are receiving from the office of the president and from other government institutions makes it easier for the institution to be able to carry out its mandate effectively.
So there's been this focus on planting trees across Freetown and other parts of the country. How important is that for Sierra Leone?
It is really important, and that has been part of the strategy that the government has put in place to say, let us embark on massive tree planting. Even the chairman of the Environment Protection Agency, that has been part of his focus, to say, let us plant trees. When you conduct this sensitization, people tell you, oh, there used to be a forest in this place, but now it is totally depleted. So we want you guys to come in and help us plant trees. So the people themselves are now calling on government to give them the requisite support for them to be able to carry out tree planting. So it's a very good thing, because you realize that if we destroy our trees, then we are making it very easy for nature to be able to unleash its wrath upon us. So you talk about issues of flooding, you talk about issues of global warming, climate change, and so on. Part of the reasons why we're having these problems is because of deforestation. So until we are able to go back and try and do these activities so that they become part of our culture. Because when you go to some of these African countries, you see the scenery, you know, the green scenery. That green scenery is as a result of their own culture, because it has become part of their own culture. That, you know what, we must learn to plant trees, and that is the culture that is being that people are being encouraged to inculcate in this country. The issue of planting trees is very, very important. It is key to environmental governance. It protects our health, and then I think we should take it very seriously.
Another key environmental hazard is air pollution. Every day we inhale fumes from rotten cars and all. What are some of your plan of actions in addressing the challenges of air pollution?
In fact, this year the theme for World Environment Day is air pollution, beat air pollution. Last year it was plastics, beat plastic pollution. The problem of air pollution has become so alarming, and so we can no longer sit by as a people or as a global community and allow that to happen unabated. Most of these respiratory diseases that we talk about, even cancer, emanate from these kinds of air pollution. The way we do even indoor pollution, like these rural communities, what they depend on is firewood, you know, to cook and carry out some other activities within the home. So that indoor pollution causes a lot of problems to their health. And you also look at the way we burn our waste. When we go out there and talk to the people, one of the things that we notice is the issue of bush burning. People conduct these activities without knowing that that is a source of their own health hazards. So we talk to them so that they understand the problem, and so that together we try and reason for us to be able to adopt measures which can help our communities in terms of our health, in terms of the environment. So the issue of air pollution is alive, it is a problem, it accelerates climate change and global warming. So as a nation, we must not be left behind. We need to step up, and like the EPA is doing right now, educating people about these kinds of things, encouraging people to adopt some other measures rather than, you know, bush burning all the time and then burning of our waste and so on. It is very important that we listen and act upon these messages.
Earlier you talked about identifying disaster-prone areas, and now we are in the rainy season. Are there any plans in terms of mitigating any future disaster?
Well, of course the EPA is not a disaster management entity, but what we are doing is the issue of sensitization. That is how we hope to contribute to managing or preventing the disaster. Because at the end of the day, yes, when disaster strikes, there are people that may be pointing fingers at the EPA. What are you doing to manage the disaster? Strictly speaking, the Environment Protection Agency is not a disaster management entity. Okay, we are sort of a regulatory institution whose mandate is there to protect the environment, to ensure that whatever is done.
Do you work in collaboration with the Freetown City Council?
Of course, that's exactly what we do. It's not because it's not our mandate, and so we should try and shy away. What we do is, you know, talk to these people, work together. Freetown City Council, which is very critical, ONS, some other government institution, Ministry of Health, even the Sierra Leone Police, you know. So work with these institutions and see how you can harmonize some of these important mandates that have been created for you. So collaboration is very important. Collaboration is a strategy for us at the Environment Protection Agency, because we realize there's no way our mandate would be achievable if we work in isolation. There is no way we can have sound environmental governance in this country if we work in isolation. And again, when we're talking about collaboration, it's a two-way thing, because the EPA may want to reach out. It is also incumbent upon these other institutions to be able to answer that call that EPA is making, because they also have a responsibility to work with other government institutions such as the EPA to be able to realize our various mandates for which our institutions have been established.
You identified accomplishments made by the EPA under your new boss. Would you want to say progress has been made in environmental protection generally?
Oh yes, I can confidently say that progress is being made. Environmental governance is not as it used to be. Today, even the fact that people would pick up their phones and then call someone at the EPA to say, oh, this is ongoing here, we think you people should act. So that awareness that you now have an institution that is responsible in dealing with these kinds of issues, that in itself is a major success. And if you look at what has been happening, you realize that now the Environment Protection Agency is like a household name. That is because we have been able to work with the people. That is because we have tried to change the mindset of people, and then, you know, try for these people to understand that yes, they have a role in environmental governance, and until they are active in fulfilling that role, then we are not able to get anywhere. So we have been able to do a lot of things in terms of, we still have a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I was going to ask, trying to sensitize people, trying to mitigate climate change and all other environmental issues. How challenging has that been for the EPA?
It is very challenging. Anything that has to do with behavioral change, it becomes very, very challenging. And for some of these issues, when you try and deal with them, the reaction you get from the people, they will say, oh, this is a livelihood issue. How are you going to stop it if you do not have alternative plans? So the issue of alternative livelihood kicks in. You do not go to communities that are predominantly engaged in charcoal production and tell them, oh, stop producing charcoal. And the next thing they ask you, yes, stop producing, and so what? This is where we sustain our livelihood. So at times, the issue of alternative livelihood, and the EPA, it is not the business of the EPA to come to communities and begin to give them promises that we cannot keep. That is not a way of dealing with the problem. We have to be very honest with them. We have to listen to them as to what is it that is bothering them, and together we try and reason as to how we can change the narrative.
Okay, so quickly we're rounding up. What's next for the EPA, and what will be your closing notes?
Well, my closing words would be as follows. In this country, we still have challenges in terms of environmental protection. Under the Paris Agreement, we have what we call the nationally determined contributions. These nationally determined contributions, it is a document in which we have set a number of measures that are geared towards improving environmental protection in our country under the framework of the Paris Agreement. So as a country, we have a responsibility to act and not be seen to be lagging behind. Because at the end of the day, even some of these donor funding that we attract out there, some of the criteria that they place on us is your environmental footprint. So you cannot be seen to be attracting donor funds and then you abusing your environment. So as a people, we have work to do. We encouraging people to work with the Environment Protection Agency. We are encouraging people to be able to adopt some of these practices that we are selling out there. We're encouraging those people that are investing in this country to know that yes, we cherish their activities in this country, we welcome them in this country, but then investment should not be done at the expense of environmental protection.
Okay, thank you so very much. Is James Tamba Kamara, Communications President of EPA, and we've been discussing environmental issues. Thank you so very much for being part of the Good
Thank you
Morning
for having
Show.
me.
And that's how we're going to end the show for today. Don't forget to join me tomorrow at 9 a.m. for another edition. Thank you so very much for watching. I am Leonora Jawara, and I will leave you with an African proverb. It's quite an interesting one. It says, even if you dance in the water, your enemies will accuse you of causing dust. Until tomorrow, have yourself a wonderful day.